Welcome to Outrage Astrology. My name is Mike.
And I'm Brittany.
We're here to piss you off. We like to teach. We like to learn. We like to talk shit. And we like to, I guess, mostly talk shit about astrology, right?
Yes. In fact, we were just talking about the other day how we are going to have like a special blow off steam episode where we just roast all the stupid shit we see in Facebook groups.
Yeah, all the stupid questions that people beginning astrology. That's horrible.
It's gonna be real fun. But today we're gonna start off like baby steps. You're just learning astrology. You have no idea about how to read a chart, what all goes into different planets, and just all the crap you see when you pull up a chart. We're gonna break it down for you. We're gonna start a series where we're gonna get into a little bit more of what we're talking about today. But here is the foundations.
Yeah. Everybody has to start somewhere, and astrology is such a complex topic. And when you first pull up your natal chart, time and time again, people will tell me, I don't know what I'm looking at. And for the most part, you really don't. I mean, it's pretty complex. But we start from the basics and start working it down and start breaking your personality down piece by piece. As you learn about your personality, you learn how to read somebody's natal chart, and it's really fascinating. And we're going to sort of give you like the how-to on, starting this wonderful process of self-discovery through astrology.
Ooh. And you never stop learning. If you think you have gotten to a point where you know everything about astrology, then we'll look at your chart and we'll find out that you're a narcissist. So, you're never going to stop learning. But we're going to start your learning now in astrology. So, the first thing that you think about when you think about astrology and horoscopes and the zodiac is your sign.
I'm a Capricorn. Does that mean I'm compatible with an Aries?
Right. Which if you go back and listen to some of our previous episodes where we talk about relationship astrology, you kind of already know where we're going with this. But, I'm a Scorpio, Mike's a Capricorn. Doesn't really mean anything because you're going to be like, well, I've read my descriptions and like it sort of matches, but like not really, and it's really general. And we're going to tell you why it's so general because it's only one thing.
In astrology, everything means something. I mean, let's be real here. Everything does mean something.
Yeah.
But there's just so much more to the story. I mean, yeah, I'm a Capricorn. Yeah, I can be. Brittany, would it be correct for me to say that I'm ambitious?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, I do embody that trait, but there's so much more to me than that, and there's so much more to Brittany than being a crazy, obsessive, possessive Scorpio.
Yep. So, see, I'm already pissed off. We're starting out strong.
That's so Scorpionic.
Oh God. Okay.
But there's so much more to the picture, though. There's so much that you have to. She also has like the Sun conjunct Saturn, so that makes her a super, super determined hard worker who has this sense of burden, firmly implanted into her view of herself.
Very responsible individual.
Uh-huh.
So your sign that you're thinking of is actually your sun sign.
Yep.
So that's point number one to make, and you're going to realize that you have a lot more signs than just your sun sign, but we're getting there. So what we need to know now is how do you even pull up your natal chart?
Go to astro.com, or you can use another software, but astro.com tends to be the easiest, and for the most part, it's free, unless you want to be one of those people that donate to the cause on behalf of astro.com because they don't support themselves. But for the most part, astro.com is going to be the best place to go.
Yeah. So yeah, you're going to go to astro.com. You're going to click free horoscopes on the top little tabs. It'll drop down, and you'll choose extended chart selection. So here's when you will put in your birth data. You really need to know obviously when your birthday is, but you need to also know your time of birth, and then you'll put in your city of birth.
You'll pull up this super complicated, at first, chart, and there will be a little symbol for the sun, and that'll represent where your sun's at. And if you already know, like, oh, I'm a Gemini, then the sun's going to appear right by the glyph that symbolizes Gemini. So you'll know, okay, the sun is in Gemini. But there's so much more to the personality. There's the moon, there's Mercury, there's Mars, there's Venus, just for starters. So what are those?
Right. So the first thing you're going to notice, like Mike said, you'll see all of these zodiac signs around the wheel, around the circle. These are all the zodiac signs because to some extent you will embody each of them.
And then each of them will then be modified by the planets it's making aspects to.
Yeah. So you're going to see, your sun is the first thing you're going to hone in on. And the sun looks like a circle within a circle. And the sun is really, our sense of identity and what we're proud of and our purpose and our goals. It's, here I am kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it is relevant to a small extent. That's why when people do read descriptions about their sign, for the most part, it is generalized like a motherfucker, but it will, at least on a small level, resonate with you.
It should. And when we get into the deeper stuff with astrology, you'll see, like I said, why maybe it doesn't work perfectly for you, that general description, and that's because of all these modifying things that we'll talk about. So you'll look at your sun, you'll see the little zodiac sign that it's under, and that's kind of your starting point. Then you're going to want to look at your moon. Moon looks like a moon, really easy. The moon is your gut reaction, your instincts, your feelings, how you nurture, how you were nurtured.
And in many ways, it's just as important, if not more important, than the sun sign. It can tell you just that, knowing that sign alone can give you so much insight into a person's emotional state, they're like Brittany just said, their gut reactions to situations, whether they're a nurturer or they're a little bit more self-centered, and there's so much that can be told just from that one placement alone. If you don't want to really get too deep into astrology, at least learn your moon sign.
Please.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big deal.
It is. It is. Then the next one you're going to look for is your Mercury. It looks like the symbol for Venus or for woman, but it has two little horns on the top of its head. So Mercury, if you kind of remember your mythology, that was Hermes. He was the messenger god. So, he's going to symbolize thought, speech, communication, rational mind, your opinions, how you exchange ideas.
You want to find out how smart somebody is or how they think? Look at their Mercury. Look at what Mercury's doing, what sign it's in, and what aspects it's making, and what house it's in.
Yeah. And then we go to Venus. Venus is probably what you would think of for the most part. So Venus is the symbol for female, okay? It's the little circle with, a stick figure basically. And Venus is how you love and what you love and what you value.
And it's just really weird, but it's what makes you horny. It's true. I mean, Mars is how you act on that horniness, but Venus is what you love, what is pleasing to you aesthetically. It has a lot to do with your self-esteem as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a big one, is your self-esteem, your self-worth.
Yeah, somebody who has a lot of negative aspects being made to Venus, or it's not a really good sign, or in a bad house, and we'll go over aspects later. You can pretty much pinpoint right then and there that person might have a little bit of a self-esteem issue, or they might be a little bit obsessive, or they might be like the opposite of obsessive and run like hell at the minute you show the slightest bit of affection. And it shows your love style, your love language to an extent.
Yeah. So the next one you're going to look for is Mars. It looks like the symbol for men, male, like the Austin Powers.
What does it mean, Brittany? Let's say it together.
Circle
Ready?
With an arrow. Okay, Mars is how we fuck and how you fight.
Damn it.
You have it. I say it the other way around. You said it's still the same thing. You can say it that way.
How you fight and how you fuck.
Yeah. We always say how we fuck and how we fight.
I put a little bit more at the end of it.
But Mars is your survival, your action, your assertion, like how you go out and get what you want. So if the sun is what you're driven to get, Mars is how you're going to go get it.
Mars is the last vestiges of animal instinct left in man.
Very nicely said. Yes. Yeah, it is your reptilian brain.
Oblongata.
Okay, and then we've got Jupiter. So, well, before we shift to Jupiter, we just want to go ahead and say the ones that we have mentioned are what we call your personal planets. You're going to feel those most acutely because they move in the sky faster and they change signs faster, and those are the ones you're really going to feel integrated hardcore into your personality.
They're the ones that are going to be most noticed in another person too.
Yes. But then we go into the planets that are a little bit further away, and the first one up on the list is Jupiter. Jupiter looks like Mike says he looks like a fancy four, right? And that you're
It does. I
yeah.
drew it. It's a 4 with the
Yeah.
little curve on one of the lines.
Yeah, to me it looks like the number 24 like squished together. But either way, however you want to think of it, that's Jupiter. Jupiter, it takes like 12 years to go all the way around that wheel, that circle. So it's a slower moving planet. It represents expansion and your
Luck.
beliefs. It's luck. Yeah, Jupiter is like the super happy planet. It likes to amplify whatever it touches, whatever house it's in. It's wisdom and learning and philosophy.
You know how like when you have one of those super tiny little like dried up sponges and you drop water on it and it turns into this big giant massive fluffy sponge? Yeah, that water is Jupiter.
Water is Jupiter. That was a lovely metaphor.
When you look at your chart, where Jupiter is at, the sign in the house, it's what areas of life either bring you luck or you're naturally lucky in, or if it's negatively aspected, the opposite, then it's where you're unlucky in.
Yeah, and sometimes a little bit of both, but we'll get into all that, all those fun details. So then we have Saturn. He's the big bad boy. Nobody likes Saturn. Poor Saturn.
It's important though. It's a necessary part of everybody.
Very.
It's where I don't know. It's what you're serious about in life. Where it's like the part of your chart that shows you where you're gonna go to the school of hard knocks.
Yeah. So Saturn looks like a lowercase h with a little cross over the top of it.
That's the hardest glyph for me to draw.
Just make a little lowercase h and then cross the bar.
Yeah, but you got to take the little curve and you got to dip it down a little bit and then
well,
curve
that's
it
if you're
again,
getting
like Theo's tail.
That's only if you're getting real fancy.
You got to make it look halfway decent. I mean, I don't want to look like I'm autistic.
Mike.
What?
We'll flog him later. Don't worry, we'll flog Mike later, okay? All right. So whereas Jupiter is expansion, and autistic people, some of them can draw really, really well, okay? So shame on you.
Saturn is restriction.
Is restriction, fear, control, discipline, where we learn our hard lessons.
Yes. It's the house is really, really important because Saturn takes 28 years to go all the way around the chart. So like if you see, my Saturn's in Aquarius, well, you know what? Everybody born within the next like 2 years are gonna have that exact same sign placement. It's more important to see what house it's in and then what aspects it's making to your personal planets.
Yeah, it's gonna hang out in a sign for about 2.5 years.
When you are at the baby steps of astrology, don't worry as much about Saturn, Pluto, Uranus, Neptune. But as you continue to study, you're going to very quickly find out exactly how important those planets are. But at the very, very beginning, it is a huge deal. There's no denying that. But it's not a huge deal at first because if there's so much information in one natal chart, you'll quickly overwhelm yourself if you don't just start going through it bit by bit and learning as you go.
Yeah.
Saturn's a huge deal, but don't worry as much about it right at the beginning.
I think Mike's just saying focus on those personal planets before you overwhelm yourself with the outer planets. If you start with the personal planets and you're already feeling a little like, holy shit, this is a lot, then just baby steps. But Saturn, if this is the thing, some of you probably heard mention with the Saturn return, it happens every 29.5 years, roughly. That's why people lose their shit when they're 30.
Unless they've been living their life responsibly, and then they experience all the fruits of living a completely boring and cautious life.
Yeah, pretty much. That's kind of how that went down with me. The only thing with my Saturn return that happened that was like crappy was, I was like, oh, fuck, I'm not like a hot little bitch anymore. Like I'm an old hot bitch, but I'm not like a hot piece of shit anymore. Like it kind of made
I haven't had my Saturn return yet, thank God, but it's still barreling through my 8th house and knocking or it was knocking planets down like bowling pins as it was traveling through that clusterfuck of a crazy house in my chart, and that in itself was pretty traumatic. So I think my actual Saturn return, will pale in comparison to what I had to deal with when Saturn entered my.
You're probably right.
When
It's
Saturn
it's
entered my 8th, I went to prison.
it's preparing you. Yeah, so you'll already be ready when it returns.
Oh,
So then the next one is here's our big pet peeve, okay? You're going to learn this in astrology, and we will all know that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about if you mispronounce the next planet.
Oh, you mean Uranus?
Yeah, it's Uranus. From now on, you're all going to say it Uranus. Uranus. Okay?
I have a tattoo of the Uranus symbol on my neck, and it really bugs the shit out of me that when people call it Uranus, because the last thing I want people to ever say to me is, "Ooh, you have Uranus on your neck." That would just that's a pet peeve. That's bad.
Just say Uranus. Uranus is a little bit harder to describe as far as what it looks like. How to describe? There's a little circle at the bottom of it.
There's a line coming out of the top of the circle.
Yeah.
And there's a cross going to the line.
Hmm.
And then on the line that's going horizontal, then there's 2 curves on either side of that line at the very edge. It looks very strange.
Uranus is a tough one to draw.
Stalk my Facebook profile pictures and look at the tattoo on my neck, and you'll be like, "Oh, that's Uranus."
Yeah, so Dennis Michael Ward on Facebook if you want to go be a stalker.
Yeah, well, I mean, I already stalk people, so it wouldn't be fair for me to discourage people from stalking me.
Yeah. Don't stalk me because I have a Scorpio stellium and I like my privacy unless I want to tell you. Like, don't you tell my shit. I'll tell my shit.
Unless you shower her with compliments.
Yeah, then I'll tell you anything you want to know. Or wine. Same thing.
Shower me with wine.
Wine and compliments, and I'll just open up like a book. Uranus is the rebel planet. It is like this urge to break free and be an individual and be original, and like it's revolution.
It also rules electricity. It rules actual like sudden accidents. It rules new ways of thinking. It actually rules homosexuality.
I call it the monkey wrench because it's like, oh, there went my plans.
Yep.
So then you're going to look for Neptune. Neptune looks like Poseidon's trident.
With a circle on the bottom. And fuck Neptune. I hate Neptune.
Neptune doesn't have a circle on the bottom.
It doesn't?
No.
Oh, it doesn't. It's like the Venus symbol, but instead of it being a beautiful woman's head on top, it's like a trident.
It's a trident. Yeah, you've only been doing astrology for like a bajillion years, and you just, Mike, you got to drink your coffee, man.
I know.
So Neptune is, the best way to look at it is it refines everything it touches. And sometimes refinement is good and you get beautiful art and music and dreams and, transcendence from it. And other times you get a heroin addict. I mean,
yeah.
Neptune
rules. Neptune in the 12th house and Pisces naturally rule alcoholism. But actually, I've said this before, I think that Saturn's more related to alcoholism, but any type of escapism tendencies. So like drug abuse, so heroin, Hollywood's ruled by Neptune. Refined sugar is ruled by Neptune. And what does sugar do to you? It tastes so sweet. It's so delicious. And you want to eat it all the time. But what does it do to you? It leaves you fat and alone.
It is removed from reality. Yes. It is disillusionment.
Yes.
But like I said, I mean, you're going to see this, like I have some friends that are, very serious artists or do it for a living, and Neptune is always very prominent in their chart. And it's not doing
heroin addicts?
Huh?
Are any of them heroin addicts?
I mean, some of them have been addicts. Yeah. I'm just trying to say the good side of it, okay? the good part of it.
It's very hard to realize the good side of Neptune. It's possible. It's possible.
Both of my grandparents have it actually on their ascendant, and I feel like that makes them see the world as this very beautiful place. Anyway, we'll move on. Okay, Pluto.
Big old bad Pluto. Pluto's even crazier than Saturn.
Sometimes Pluto looks a little bit different. It kind of looks like Venus, but with an extra line. But typically, especially if you're pulling it up on astro.com, Pluto just looks like the letter P with a little horizontal line down at the bottom.
Yeah, it's like a P and an L superimposed together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
that's my next tattoo. Actually, I'm gonna get the Pluto glyph on the other side of my neck.
Are you gonna get the fancy one or just the P one?
The P. I think that the simplicity of the symbol looks a lot more rough, and so that to me symbolizes more about how Pluto really acts. It's a very rough and raw energy.
Yeah, Pluto, the more I've dealt with Pluto, the more I see it as the planet of obsession. A lot of people quickly go to death and transformation, and yes, that is certainly Pluto's MO because, again, your mythology. Pluto is the other name for the Greek god Hades, who rules the underworld. So yes, it does do that. On a very tangible level, it is obsession. It is intense.
So many incredibly powerful people have Pluto sitting. If you look at their chart, you'll see Pluto sitting on top of one of their personal planets, like
or the midheaven.
Yeah, let's see. Gordon Ramsay has Pluto conjunct Mars. Liberace. Hey, yeah. Did you know Liberace has Pluto conjunct Venus?
That makes sense. I did not know that. So we would have been friends. We would have been friends with Liberace, huh? Would have worked out well.
Well, did you ever see that movie with Matt Damon?
That movie with Matt Damon? No.
The one where Matt Damon's like Liberace's like live-in boyfriend?
No.
You would not want to be friends with Liberace after seeing that movie. Hillary Clinton has Pluto conjunct Mars. George W. Bush has Pluto conjunct Mercury. It's endless.
Surprises me a little. People gave him so much shit for like being such a bad orator, but he really wasn't. He really wasn't. The press ripped him apart. He actually, if you think about that speech, a very quick speech after 9/11 when you were a baby, Mike.
I was in the 4th grade and I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a huge deal.
When he gets up there and he gets that megaphone and he's like, "We're going after these motherfuckers. We hear you." That's a very Mercury conjunct Pluto.
Well, yeah, but he also had Pluto right on top of the ascendant as well. So Pluto and Mercury are right on top of the ascendant. But he also, what I also noticed? So many dictators, because I'm not a big fan of George W. Bush for many reasons. And he had the sun in the 12th house. Vladimir Putin has the sun in the 12th house. Joseph Stalin had the sun in the 12th house. So many people that started huge wars that ended up committing, causing the death of thousands and thousands of people. They have their sun in the 12th house.
I think he's adorable.
I think he's a fucking moron.
I think he's adorable. Okay, so those are your planets. Those are your planets. So now we're going to talk about what we lovingly refer to in astrology as the big three. And this is the three things that are going to give you a really fast way to get a grip on who a person is.
Yes. That's like the three basic parts of the personality. So we talked about the sun and the moon, but what's the third part of the big three?
Your ascendant. So some people call it the rising sign, and you can also call it the ascendant. When you're looking at that wheel that you've pulled up on astro.com, you'll see over on the left side where it says AC. And whatever zodiac sign that AC is sitting on, however you want to look at it, is your ascendant or your rising sign. This is think of it as the lens through which you see the world and the world sees you. It's how you show up when people first meet you. So like your mama is not going to see you as your rising sign, but your neighbor that you just met, they're going to see you as your ascendant.
And it affects your appearance and it affects your first impressions because there's 12 houses in the zodiac, and the ascendant starts the 12 houses. It shows what part in the chart the 12 houses start, moving in. And so not only does it affect your appearance, but it kind of lays the basis out for your whole chart. So the ascendant can have effects on more than just the way you appear to others. But at the very core of it, the ascendant has a lot to do with your appearance and your first impression sort of vibe.
It's the most personal point in your chart. So the ascendant is not a planet like the ones that we just went through. It's a mathematical point. It's where the sun was rising when you were born. And it is the most, like I said, personal you part of your chart.
Yeah. It's calculated based upon the time of day you were born and where you were at.
Yeah. So the ascendant, the sun, and the moon are your big three. So, Mike, what's yours?
I am a sun in Capricorn. I am a moon in Leo. Ooh, let's talk about that in a little bit because I love people talking about me. And then I am an ascendant in Gemini. So Cap, Leo, Gemini.
Yeah. And my sun and moon are in Scorpio, and I am a rising, or my ascendant is in Virgo.
Yeah. So you can already tell the difference between our ascendants by how Brittany's a lot more to the point. Not necessarily, I wouldn't say to the point, but more precise.
I keep us on track.
Yes, and she's a lot more analytical. At least she comes off that way. She has this odd, sexy librarian kind of vibe.
That's so funny because Justin and I, my husband and I, you guys, we're talking about archetypes and how pretty much everybody we know, you can kind of give them a label. Like, Justin's like the philosophical guy. He's the one that's going to like corner you at a bar and talk to you about, the meaning of life. And my mom is, the nerdy computer girl. I'm like, so what's mine? And that's what my husband said too. He's like, you're like the sexy librarian.
And a lot of Virgo risings have that sort of vibe to them. My mom's a Virgo rising. She definitely, I mean, you look at the rest of her chart, she's got all that kind of Aquarius, but she comes off like the librarian lady that you find out is actually like a secret hedonist. And then like Brittany's got the ascendant in Virgo, so she comes off like that little sexy librarian. But then you look at all those Scorpio placements, and that librarian demeanor is hiding an emotional monster.
I thought you were going to say like a super sensual, like sexy, but no, you're like a monster. It's hiding a monster.
Well.
Okay. So the next thing is you're going to want to know what all of these little sections or zones or pie slices on your chart are, and they're labeled numbers 1 through 12. Those are your houses. Your houses are
the 12 areas of life.
Yes, that's what they are. So you're going to see quickly where your focuses are and how you, if your Venus is in the second house, then you're probably going to be much more into your comfort and your security, your home. You're going to be a good host or hostess. It's going to function differently than a Venus in the third house like mine is, where I just want to talk.
Or if your Venus is in the 10th house and you're always trying to bang your boss because you think it might get you a promotion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if your Venus is in the 7th house and you're just codependent as fuck.
Mm-hmm. So real quickly, the first house is the house of self. It is like, because that's where your ascendant lives. So the first house is your quintessential everything about me, your body, your, like we said, how you show up in the world. The second house is your security, your resources, your finances. The third house is like communication and thought processes, siblings, close friends, close relatives. The fourth house is your roots, your home, your foundations, where you came from.
What you need to feel emotionally secure.
Yeah. Your fifth house is fun. It's just, your fifth house is like kind of risk-taking, fun, recreation, procreation. Children also fall into the fifth house.
Pets fall into the fifth house. The lighter side of pets. You can put pets in the fifth or the sixth house. To an extent, drug use, recreational drug use to an extent. Gambling, hookers. Hookers can be found in the fifth house.
Hookers can be found in the
Only
fifth.
when they're
So if
happy.
you're searching for hookers,
Only when they're happy. If they're like a sex slave, then it's in the 8th house or the 12th.
it's in the eighth house. Okay. The sixth house is body issues, health, illness, your day-to-day grind, your routine.
Taking care of yourself. Yeah, it's
A lot of people put pets in the sixth house because they are a very like day in and day out kind of. I would say like your cute little puppy is in the fifth house, and like, you know, if you have a dairy farm, then your cows are in the sixth house.
yeah. Unless you're having sex with your cows, then it might be a 5th house thing.
You just went there.
Or an 8th house.
Here we talk about bestiality. We make fun of mental handicaps, and we talk about bestiality. Everybody should listen. Okay. And our seventh house is partnerships. So this is going to include all sorts of partnerships. This is where we firstly are going to look for marriage and relationships, but it's also the house of open enemies. It's legality. So your relationship with your therapist or your lawyer is going to come in the seventh house.
Legal papers can be found in the 7th house and in the 3rd house as well, but more in the 7th when they actually have far-reaching consequences. Child support, that's in the 7th house. It's a good house because it has a lot to do with relationships, but it's like not the emotional side of relationships. It's like the marriage side of relationships. Like, you have to understand that when they set these houses up, they did it back in the ancient periods of time, like arranged marriages and marriages for political gain and stuff like that, and just mutually beneficial partnerships were kind of viewed a little bit differently today. And marriage wasn't necessarily always considered an emotional thing. So the 7th house isn't really as emotional as the following house that we'll talk about in a moment.
So the if you look at the wheel, you realize that the seventh house is opposite of the first house. So what is not me, that's the first house, is other, which is the seventh.
Yeah.
Mike and I have a different take on the eighth house. We'll both give our take and why. So Mike, you go for it.
Okay, so the 8th house is an emotional house. It is a water house. So the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th house represent the emotional triplicity. Those are the parts of your conscious that are hidden from sight that exist within you. And the 8th house is so like once you get married and you form that partnership in the 7th house, the 8th house is like the nitty gritty kind of stuff of it. It has a lot to do with death and rebirth, sex, close intimacy, shared resources, taxes. So like let's put it this way: the 8th house is all the dark sides of human relating. Inheritance can be found in the 8th house because of when you form an emotional bond with somebody or you're intimate with somebody through family relations or through partner relations. Usually, an inheritance is something is usually tied up all into that. Shared resources are tied up into that. So, I think Alyssa Trahan explained it like this. So, like the 7th house is like we got married, and then the 8th house is like, oh, but my marriage partner just got sued by his bitchy ex-wife. So it's like all the intense stuff, all the intense parts to human relating.
Okay, so there's the modern astrology, what a lot of people how they look at the eighth house. So when the houses were set up, they did not follow this. I'm getting a little bit more into depth astrology, but I have to explain why I don't believe.
She's not going more in depth. She's going more ancient.
Well, I'm just explaining why I disagree with 75% of what you just said. And the reason is
Oh my God.
because the reason is because in modern astrology, they want to superimpose the zodiac signs over the houses. So if you start with the first house, universal house being Aries, and the second one is going to be Taurus and so forth. That's why Mike was saying, these particular houses are water houses because they would be the ones, if you superimposed it, would rule Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. But that's not actually how the houses were set up. They were just set up to be zones of life, and there's a whole nother spiel that I can get into. I won't right now about why they are what they are. But the eighth house, therefore, does not correspond to Scorpio. It does not correspond to Pluto because Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. The eighth house is just the eighth house. The eighth house is actually the house of death and of inheritance and of, like you said, taxes and other people's money. But the eighth house is set up as other people's money, because now here's where I do agree with you, is if the 7th house is your spouse, then you see that there's a pairing. So 7th and 8th house kind of go together. So the 7th house is your marriage, and then the 8th house is their money. So, okay, let's go back to the wheel. The first house is you, right? The second house is your money. So if we do that if we started the zodiac at the 7th house and made that the first house, you, the second house is money. Okay, here it's the 7th house. So it's your partner, and then that second house from it is their money. So yes, it is inheritances, but it's fundamentally the house of where things go to die. That's my take on it. Mike gave you his. We'll go to the 9th house.
I think it's where like things go to bang and smoke crack. Honestly, the 8th house has been called the crack house of the zodiac many times before. From my perspective, that rings to be true.
Okay. Well, you guys can do your own research and come to your conclusions. But
well, I mean, I do have a stellium in the 8th house, and I used to sort of like run a crack house. So.
Oh my dear God.
I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, let's be real with it.
I mean, we can pull up your chart and figure out why that's the case another day. But the 9th house. The 9th house is your philosophical house, your house of higher learning, of religion, and of foreign travel.
And goals.
And goals. Okay. Yeah. I can get down with that. I kind of look at the 11th house as goals a little bit more. But
the 11th house is like hopes and dreams.
Okay. All right. I'll buy it. I'll buy it.
Well, see, if you think about it, like if you look at the natural progressions of the houses, with the 9th house, like the aspiring for education, for higher education, it's part of an overall goal that leads you into the 10th house, which we'll explain in a moment.
Like I said, I can get down with that, because if you're pairing them, if 7th, 8th go together, the 9th, 10th go together, I'm down.
Mm-hmm. And then 10th and 11th go together, and 11th and 12th go together.
You'll also notice that something up at the top of your chart will say MC. That is the midheaven or the medium coeli. I'm probably mispronouncing coeli. That's just how I say it.
No,
but it's
pronounced it right. And then at the opposite in the cusp of the 4th house, as we discussed earlier, your family and stuff like that, that's the IC, which is the MM coeli.
Yeah. So the MC is going to fall generally somewhere in your 9th and 10th house most of the time, especially if you're in North America. And that is kind of, I always look at it as your career point. It's your reputation. It's this really pivotal point in your chart that shows, how people in the career world look at you. So it's gonna fall somewhere around 9th or 10th. And then the 10th house is the career house. It is work. It is reputation.
Well, it's like the 6th house, but with a purpose, other than just taking care of yourself.
Yeah, these are really like what you were kind of made to do, 10th house stuff.
Yeah. And the ruler of my 10th house is in the 8th house, or the 9th house if you use traditional astrology, but still, that's probably why I ran a crack house.
So now we're getting into rulerships, but I'll share mine. My ruler, the 9th house or the 10th house is actually Gemini for me, and the ruler of Gemini is Mercury. It sits in the 4th house, and I'm a mama. I mean, I work, but primarily I'm a mama.
You were built to make babies.
Yeah, and look good doing it.
You do.
And so the 11th house is networking and like friendships and like you said earlier, Mike, your hopes and dreams.
Yeah. You know how like when you make a new friend and you get all excited because you made a really cool friend, and then you have all these like hopes and dreams about all the cool stuff we're gonna do together? That's what the 11th house would actually like. Like me and Brittany had all these hopes and dreams about making a badass podcast.
Well,
and then we're gonna go
badass.
to the 12th house where dreams go to die.
Yeah, that's a good segue. Our dreams are not dying. We're doing awesome, man.
We actually are.
Okay, so the 12th house is the house of self-undoing. Do not let people convince you that the 12th house is like, this is just, they're going to like water it down. This is some, place that we transcend, and that we kind of are spiritual, and that can it do that? Yeah, usually that's.
For the most part, the 12th house is just scary as fuck.
Yeah, you're going to go through a lot of shit before you ever get to any of that transcendence. So
God, that house is so scary. It's scary. It's mysterious. You know what you find in the 12th house? You find psychopaths. You find mental illness. You find hidden addictions. Prisons are in the 12th house.
yeah,
Mental
institutions.
institutions are 12th house. Hospitals are the 12th house.
Yeah.
Hidden enemies are in the 12th house.
Man,
And then,
somebody is like pulling out hardcore by your house. Like hear their wheels squealing. Yeah, so the 12th house is probably where that person driving that car is going to end up later in the hospital because they're a shitty driver.
The 12th house is where things go to die.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
it's about your own self-undoing.
Yeah, you're going to find hardcore addicts in this house. People who struggled with it a lot.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean you're never going to get over being. I mean, I know people who have been addicts and they have a lot going on in their 12th house, and they are, totally recovered addicts, and it's fine now, but it still happens.
It takes a lot of work. People that have really, really heavy 12 houses, they have to really, really do a lot of self-examination. It's hard. It's really hard for those people, but they can do it. It's a very karmic house.
Yeah, true.
It's like the 12th house, navigating through 12th house issues is like trying to swim in a pool made of honey. Like you can struggle and struggle and struggle, but eventually you're just gonna tire out, and that whole feeling of God, I just can't get up. It's eventually gonna overtake you unless you're really, really, really strong, or you figure out something to get the fuck out of it.
Your metaphor game is strong today.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so then the last thing you're going to notice is the aspects. Now, this is when it gets a little trickier. We're going to break down aspects for you more next time. But the aspects are those lines that you see in the chart. Just really quick, you can get a grip of aspects by just realizing that the blue lines that you see are planets that are interacting or relating to each other in a harmonious or easy way. The energy flow between them is easy. And the red lines are where it is difficult.
Yep. Believe it or not, the hard aspects, the red lines, and then in some cases the conjunction. The conjunction's an aspect too. That's when two planets are sitting on top of each other. That's called a conjunction.
Right next to each other, yeah.
Yeah. Each of those aspects means something different, but for the most part, for all intents and purposes, blue is easy and then red is hard. But red lines between personal planets, those are when the planets are, like, I guess, in layman's terms, arguing or having a disagreement. It's called, square is like dynamic tension, and those are problems or issues within your personality that are so apparent that you're forced to address them at some point in your life. So having a lot of hard aspects in your chart isn't really a bad thing. It's just, they're called character building aspects. Mm-hmm. People that have a lot of blue lines in their chart, like way too many blue lines and not a lot of red lines, they can be really entitled, sometimes lazy. Things just come really easy to them, so they don't have any, desire to try. So they don't really do a whole lot. They don't live bad lives. They don't live good lives. But it's a very interesting thing. Very interesting interplay.
Yeah, some of the people that you see who are the most successful and have accomplished a lot in their lives have something we call a grand cross, which is just a whole bunch of, it's two oppositions and four squares, and it's making this, it looks like a big cross in the middle of their chart, and that's really tough. But you get people that
really dynamic, and
the coal has made a diamond. I mean, it's put it under so much pressure. Melissa, I love Melissa Etheridge. Did you know I was raised on Melissa Etheridge? She has a grand cross.
So does Michael Jordan.
Really? See? So, you don't want to see too much, all those blue lines. Don't get super excited if you see a bunch of blue lines, because if you don't have anything confronting you, you're not going to grow. So that's like, the trust fund baby that was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and he just, it doesn't have to work for anything.
Yep. If you see a lot of blue lines in somebody's chart, well, congratulations, you're kind of a basic bitch.
Yeah. Oh, Charles Dickens has a Grand Cross.
Charles Manson has a Grand Cross too.
Well, see, these things can go, but he's very determined.
Yeah, yeah. Very magnetic.
Yeah, very determined. And then you're going to see, the little chart below there. It's like a grid pattern that is showing you all of those aspects, and particularly it'll have numbers beside them. Don't worry about that. We're going to get into that next time, but that's what that is in the chart.
That talks about like orbs, the orbs and the aspects we'll talk about later. If the aspects are applying or separating, it's pretty, yeah.
So hopefully now you know what you're looking at when you pull up your natal chart, and you can hang out with us next time when we get a little bit more specific. We're going to break down the aspects better for you.
Yeah, and you can ask us questions. Also, we do offer consultations, both of us. We're both practicing astrologers. Outrage Astrology at gmail.com. Feel free to contact us. We're constantly checking it. We'll get back quickly.
Yep. And, subscribe to the podcast. You can find it most major places that you get your podcast. If you subscribe, then you're going to know when new episodes are up. We put up new content every week, and it is just as fabulous as this one.
It's about to get even better.
That's right. All right. I'm Brittany.
I'm Mike. Thank you for tuning in to Outrage Astrology.